The morning started like any other on Kepler-4 for to be. Dr. Lee Temin walked through his small medical station, checking supplies and preparing for another quiet day on the frontier world. The station was nothing special, just 3 connected buildings. With basic medical equipment and enough room for 20 patients, it sat alone on the edge of New Sol Colony, where miners and traders stopped for treatment when they got hurt or sick. Temin had been working here for 5 years. He was 32 years old, with gentle eyes and steady hands that never shook, even during the worst emergencies. The colonists trusted him completely. It saved many lives with limited resources and an endless supply of patience. The planet was peaceful most days. Red dust covered everything, and 2 small suns gave the sky an orange glow. The nearest major trade route was 3 days away by ship, so visitors were rare. Temin liked it that way, could focus on his work without the politics and chaos of the inner worlds. That morning, Temin was treating a miner named Kim Gin-ho, who had broken his arm in a cave-in. As he wrapped the man's arm in a cast, the ground began to shake. At first, they thought it was another mining accident. The shaking got stronger. Medical supplies fell from shelves. The lights flickered. "What's happening, Doc?" Gin-ho asked, his face pale with worry. Temin looked out the window and saw something that made his blood freeze. A massive ship was falling from the sky, trailing fire and smoke. It was unlike any human vessel he had ever seen. The hull was black as space itself, covered in spikes and strange symbols that seemed to move when he looked at them. The ship was at least 200 meters long and shaped like a giant claw. The ship crashed into the desert, about a kilometer away from the medical station. The impact shook the ground so hard that several windows cracked. A cloud of red dust rose into the air, blocking out the suns for several minutes. "That's not one of ours," Gin-ho whispered. Temin's hands moved automatically, packing emergency medical supplies into his field kit. He had no idea what kind of beings were in that ship, but if they were alive, they would need help. His training as a doctor was simple: help anyone who needed it, no matter who they were. "Doc, you can't go out there," Gin-ho said, grabbing Temin's arm with his good hand. "We don't know what's in that ship." "That's exactly why I need to go," Temin replied. He pulled on his environmental suit and grabbed his medical kit. "Lock the station down and contact the colony. Tell them to stay away until I signal that it's safe." Temin took his small hover bike and rode toward the crash site. As he got closer, he could see that the ship had split open like a broken egg. Strange green liquid leaked from the hole, dissolving the rocks it touched. The air around the ship shimmered with heat and something else, something that made his skin crawl. He stopped his bike 50 meters away and walked the rest of the distance. On foot, the closer he got, the more he could smell something terrible, like rotting meat mixed with burning metal. His heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears, but he kept walking. Then he saw them. 3 creatures stood near the wreckage. They were the most terrifying things Temin had ever seen. They were over 8 feet tall, with bodies like giant insects covered in black armor. Their heads were triangular, with 4 eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Each hand had 4 fingers, ending in claws that were longer than kitchen knives. When they moved, Temin could see rows of sharp teeth in their mouths. These were Velthic. Even on a frontier world, everyone knew about the Velthic. They were the monsters that parents used to scare children. They were the reason entire colonies went silent overnight. They were killers that ate their prey while it was still alive, and one of them was lying on the ground, clearly dying. The injured Velthok was larger than the others, probably their leader. Green blood pooled around his body, and his breathing was shallow and quick. The other 2 creatures stood over him, making low growling sounds. When they saw Temin approaching, they turned toward him and raised their claws. Temin stopped walking. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run. These creatures could tear him apart in seconds. But his medical training was stronger than his fear. He could see that the injured one was dying, and he was the only doctor within days of travel. Slowly, Temin raised his hands to show he was not armed. He pointed to his medical kit, then to the wounded Velthak. The two standing creatures watched him with their glowing eyes, but they did not attack. "I'm a doctor," Taman said, knowing they probably could not understand him. "I want to help." Took a step forward. The creatures tensed, ready to strike. Taman took another step. His legs felt like water, but he kept moving. When he was just a few meters away, he knelt down and opened his medical kit. The wounded Veilthek's eyes opened and looked at him. Up close, Taman could see that these were not the eyes of a mindless killer. They were intelligent, aware, and filled with pain. The creature was trying to speak, but only blood came out of his mouth. Taman began to work. He had no idea how Veltek bodies worked, but blood was blood, and wounds were wounds. He used his scanner to map the creature's internal structure. Learning as he went, the Veltek had been injured by sharp metal from the ship crash. Several pieces were still inside his body, cutting him from the inside. For the next 3 hours, Taman worked to save the life of the galaxy's most feared predator. He stopped the bleeding, removed the metal pieces, and closed the wounds with medical foam. The two other Veltok never moved, never made a sound, but their eyes never left him. When Taman finally finished, the wounded Veilthek's breathing had become stronger and more regular. The creature's eyes focused on him, and for a moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, the Veilthek raised one massive hand and gently touched Taman's face with the tip of one claw. It was the most terrifying and beautiful moment of Taman's life. He had just saved the life of a creature that should have killed him without a second thought. And somehow, that creature understood what he had done. The Velthok spoke in a voice like grinding stone. But somehow, Taman understood the meaning, if not the words. "You healed me, small one." "Why? Because you needed help," Taman replied simply. The great creature's eyes closed. For the first time in hours, Taman allowed himself to breathe. He had no idea that this moment would change everything, not just for him, but for the entire galaxy. 3 weeks passed after the Velthok ship left Kepler-4 for 2B. Dr. Lee Temin tried to return to his normal routine. Everything felt different now. Colonists looked at him with new respect, mixed with fear, whispered about the human. Doctor Who had touched a Veltek and lived to tell about it. Taman had not told anyone the full story. He simply said he had provided medical aid to injured aliens, and they had left peacefully. The colonists accepted this explanation, but he could see the questions in their eyes. How do you treat a creature that could kill you with one swipe of its claw? How do you stay calm when facing the galaxy's most feared predators? The truth was, Taman was not sure himself. Something had changed in him during those 3 hours of surgery. When he looked into the wounded Veilthek's eyes, he had seen pain and intelligence, not just animal fury. He had seen a being that could think and feel, just like any other patient. His assistant Park Minji had arrived the day after the Veilthek left. She was 28 years old, a skilled nurse who had requested transfer to the frontier after. Working in the busy hospitals of Core World, she said she wanted a quiet life. Taman suspected she was running from something. "Doctor, there's another ship coming in," Minji said, looking out the window with worry. "It's big, and it's not human." Taman looked up from his patient files. Outside, he could see a massive vessel descending from the orange sky. This ship was different from the Velthek craft. It was smooth and white, shaped like a giant egg, with thousands of small holes covering its surface. As it came closer, Taman could see movement inside those holes. "That's a Korthok swarm ship," Mingi whispered. "We need to evacuate the colony right now." Taman had heard of the Korthok swarm. They were insect-like creatures that traveled in huge groups, eating everything in their path. Entire planets had been stripped bare by their endless hunger. They were almost as feared as the Velthek, but in a different way. The Velthek were predators that killed quickly. The Korthok were a plague that consumed slowly. "Get the emergency supplies ready," Taman said calmly. "And contact the colony. But tell them to stay inside their buildings. No. Do not try to run." "Doctor, what are you doing?" Minji asked, as she watched him pack his medical kit. Replied, the Korthok ship landed in the same area where the Velthok had crashed. As Taman rode his hoverbike toward the landing site, he could see thousands of creatures pouring out of the ship. They looked like giant ants, each one the size of a small dog, with 6 legs and sharp mandibles that clicked constantly. But these Korthok were not acting like the stories said they would. They were not spreading out to consume everything in sight. Instead, they were forming a circle around something, protecting it. In the center of the circle lay the largest Korthok Teeman had ever seen. It was the size of a ground car, with a swollen abdomen that pulsed with strange colors. This was a Korthok queen, and she was clearly in great pain. As Teeman approached, the smaller Korthok turned toward him. Their compound eyes reflected the light like thousands of tiny mirrors. He expected them to attack, but they simply watched him. Then, one of the larger workers stepped forward and made a series of clicking sounds. Teeman realized with surprise that he could understand the meaning even though he did not know the language. The Korthok was telling him that their queen was dying. They had heard about the human doctor who healed the Velthok leader. They had come seeking the same miracle. "I don't know if I can help," Teeman said honestly, "but I will try." Worker clicked again, and the circle opened to let him through. Teeman knelt beside the queen and began his examination. Her body was vastly different from anything he had treated before. She had multiple hearts, a complex nervous system that ran throughout her body, and organs he could not identify, but he could see the problem. The queen was trying to lay eggs, but something was wrong. The eggs were too large, and they were stuck inside her body. Without help, she would die, and with her, the entire swarm would perish. "I need to perform surgery," Teeman said to the worker. "It will be dangerous, but it's the only way to save her." The worker translated his words to the swarm. Thousands of creatures clicked and buzzed, discussing this strange human who wanted to cut open their queen. Finally, they agreed. For the next 6 hours, Teeman worked to save the Korthok queen. Minji had followed him to the landing site, and despite her fear, she assisted him with the surgery. Together, they carefully removed the stuck eggs and repaired the damage to the queen's body. When the queen finally opened her eyes, the entire swarm fell silent. She looked at Teeman with her massive compound eyes, and like the Veltik before her, she seemed to understand what he had done. The queen spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. "You have saved not just me, but all of my children. We are in your debt, healer." "I don't need any debt," Teeman replied. "I just want you and your swarm to be healthy." The queen clicked softly and the swarm began to move. But before they returned to their ship, each Korthok worker approached Teeman and gently touched his hand with their mandibles. It was their way of saying thank you. As the Korthok ship lifted off, Mingi stood beside Teeman, watching it disappear into the sky. "Doctor, what's happening to you?" she asked. First the Velthak, now the Korthak. "How are you doing this?" Teeman thought about her question. "I'm not doing anything special. I'm just treating patients who need help." "But these aren't patients," Mingi said. "These are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy." Teeman said quietly. "They're just scared beings who are in pain. It's just like anyone else who comes to us for help." Over the next few days, news of the Korthok Queen's healing spread through the galactic communication networks. 2 of the most feared species in the universe had sought help from the same human doctor. The story was too strange to believe, but too detailed to ignore. Teeman tried to return to his normal routine, but he knew it was impossible. Word was spreading through the dark corners of the galaxy in the places where the most dangerous creatures lived. There was a human doctor on a frontier world who would heal anyone, no matter how terrifying they were. He had no idea that his small medical station was about to become the most important place in the galaxy. He had no idea that creatures beyond imagination were already planning their journeys to find him. He had no idea that his simple desire to help others would reshape the balance of power in the universe. All he knew was that when the next ship arrived, he would be ready to help whoever needed it, because that's what doctors do. 2 months had passed since the Korthok Queen's healing. Dr. Lee Teeman's medical station had become busier than ever, but not with human patients. Word had spread through the galaxy's darkest corners about the human doctor who could heal anyone. No matter how dangerous they were, Park Mingi had adapted to their new reality faster than Teeman expected. She no longer jumped when alien ships landed near the station. Instead, She calmly prepared medical supplies and helped Taman research the biology of species they had never encountered before. "Doctor, we have another incoming ship," Minji said, checking her scanner. "This one is different from anything we've seen." Taman looked out the window and felt his breath catch. The ship approaching was not really a ship at all. It was a massive cube of black crystal floating silently through the air. The surface rippled like water, and strange lights moved inside it like trapped lightning. "Shadowkin," Taman whispered. "I've only read about them in old reports. The Shadowkin were beings of living darkness that fed on life energy. They could pass through solid matter and drain the life from entire cities without anyone seeing them. Most people believed they were just legends, stories told to frighten children." The crystal cube landed softly in the desert, making no sound at all. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, part of the cube opened like a flower, and something emerged. The Shadowkin looked like a human shadow that had learned to stand upright. It was tall and thin, with no clear features except for 2 points of blue light where eyes should be. It moved across the ground without making footprints, flowing like smoke in the wind. Behind it came to more Shadowkin, carrying something between them. It was another shadow being, but this one was flickering like a candle about to go out. Even from a distance, Taman could see it was badly injured. "You're bringing us a patient," Minji said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Get the energy containment unit ready," Taman said, "and the spectral analysis equipment. We'll need to understand their energy patterns before we can help." The Shadowkin moved toward the medical station in complete silence. As they got closer, Taman could feel the temperature drop. Frost formed on the windows, and the lights dimmed as if the creatures were absorbing the energy around them. The lead Shadowkin stopped just outside the medical station. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through empty caves. "Human healer, we seek your aid. Our brother is dying." "Bring him inside," Taman said. "I'll do what I can." The Shadowkin carried their injured companion into the medical station. Taman had prepared a special room with energy-dampening fields to prevent the creatures from accidentally draining the station's power. As they placed the wounded Shadowkin on the examination table, Taman could see the problem. The creature's energy field was unstable. Parts of its body were flickering between existence and nothingness. It was like watching someone fade away bit by bit. "What happened to him?" Taman asked. "He was caught in a stellar explosion," the lead Shadowkin replied. "The intense radiation disrupted his energy matrix. He cannot maintain his form." Taman had never treated a being made of pure energy before, but he understood the basic principle. The Shadowkin was like a living electrical field, and something had damaged the patterns. That kept him stable. "I need to map his energy signature," Taman said. "Minji, start the quantum scanner." For the next 4 hours, Taman worked to understand how the Shadowkin's body functioned. He discovered that they were not really solid beings at all, but complex patterns of energy that had learned to think and feel. The injured Shadowkin's pattern was breaking down, like a song with missing notes. Using a combination of energy manipulators and quantum field generators, Taman began to repair the damaged patterns. It was like performing surgery on a ghost, requiring precision beyond anything he had ever attempted. Minji helped by monitoring the energy levels, making sure the medical equipment didn't overload. As they worked, the other Shadowkin watched. In absolute silence, Taman could feel their attention like cold wind on his skin. Finally, the wounded Shadowkin's form stabilized. The flickering stopped, and his energy field became smooth and steady. The creature's blue eyes opened and focused on Taman. "You have restored my essence," the Shadowkin said. "How is this possible? We are beings of pure energy, no physical healer should be able to touch us." "Energy is just another form of matter," Taman replied. "And matter can be healed if you understand how it works." The Shadowkin rose from the table, his form now solid and strong. He looked at his hands, then at Taman, as if seeing him for the first time. "We have fed on countless living beings," the Shadowkin said. "We have drained the life from entire worlds, yet you've saved one of us without asking for anything in return." "Why? Because you needed help," Taman said simply. "That's what doctors do." The lead Shadowkin stepped forward. We are in your debt, healer. Know that from this day forward, you and your companion are under the protection of the Shadow Fleet. No harm will come to you while we exist. As the Shadowkin prepared to leave, something extraordinary happened. The healed Shadowkin approached. Temin gently touched his shoulder. For a moment, Temin felt a strange sensation, as if his own life energy was being examined and memorized. I have marked you, the Shadowkin said. Any of our kind will know you as a friend. This mark will protect you from our hunger. After the Shadowkin left, Temin and Minji sat in the medical station, trying to process what had just happened. They had saved the life of a being made of pure energy, a creature that most people believed was just a myth. Dr. Minji said, "Quietly, I'm starting to understand something. These creatures aren't just coming here because you can heal them. They're coming because you treat them like people, not monsters." Taman nodded. Fear makes monsters out of anyone. A pain, suffering are universal. When someone is hurt, it doesn't matter what they look like or where they come from. They just need help. Over the following weeks, even more strange visitors arrived. The Dread Titans came next, massive beings that existed partially in another dimension. They were so large that they had to manifest only small parts of themselves in normal space. One of them had been injured while moving between dimensions, and the wound was preventing him from returning to his home realm. Temin learned to work with dimensional mathematics, using quantum field generators to repair tears in spacetime itself. When he succeeded, the grateful Titan left behind a small piece of crystallized time, a gift beyond any earthly treasure. Then came the Neithral Collective, a hive mind of living crystals that shared one consciousness across millions of individual bodies. They had never allowed individual units to separate from the collective before, but they did so to bring their wounded to Taman for healing. Each successful treatment added to Taman's growing reputation. His small medical station had become a pilgrimage site for the galaxy's most dangerous beings. They came seeking healing, and they left as protectors. But with each new patient, Taman realized that something bigger was happening. The most feared creatures in the galaxy were changing, becoming something different because of their contact with human compassion. He had no idea that his actions were being watched by the Galactic Council, that forces far more dangerous than any of his patients were beginning to take notice of the human doctor, who had tamed the galaxy's monsters with nothing but kindness. 6 months had passed since Dr. Lee Temin first treated the wounded Velthek leader. His medical station had become the most unusual place in the galaxy, a sanctuary where the universe's most feared creatures came for healing. But not everyone was happy about this development. The Galactic Council had been watching Teman's activities with growing concern. To them, he was either a traitor working with dangerous aliens or a fool who would eventually be killed by the monsters he tried to help. Either way, they saw him as a problem that needed to be solved. Commander Zareth of the Zarathi Empire had volunteered to handle the situation. The Zarathi were a militaristic species that believed in strength above all else. They saw humans as weak and inferior, useful only as servants or slaves. The idea that a human could command the loyalty of dangerous aliens was insulting to their entire worldview. "This human has made a mockery of natural order," Zareth told his officers as their fleet approached Kepler 4 for 2B. "Predators do not protect. Prey, the strong do not serve the weak. We will capture this doctor and use him for our own purposes." The Zarathi fleet consisted of 12 warships, each one bristling with weapons designed to destroy entire cities. They had come expecting to face a small human colony with minimal defenses. They had not expected to face the friends that Taman had made. Dr. Kim Sujin was in the medical station when the attack began. She was a military medic who had served with Temin years ago, and she had come to investigate the strange reports about her old colleague. She was a practical woman who believed in facts and evidence, not fairy tales about doctors who tamed monsters. "Taman, we need to evacuate," Sujin said, watching the Zarathi ships descend from orbit. "Those are military vessels. They're not here to talk." "I can't leave my patients," Taman replied. He was treating an injured Korthok worker whose leg had been crushed in a mining accident. Park Mingi was helping him stabilize the creature before surgery. Your patients are insects and shadows, Sujin said. They can't protect you from military-grade weapons. You might be surprised, Minji said quietly.
Out.
Looking out the window, the first Zirathi dropship landed near the medical station, and 30 armed soldiers rushed out. They were tall, reptilian beings with scales that could deflect small weapons fire. Their leader raised a plasma rifle and aimed it at the medical station. "Human doctor, you will come with us," the leader announced through a loudspeaker. "We'll serve the Zarathi Empire. Your alien friends cannot help you now." That was when the shadows began to move. The Shadowkin emerged from the ground itself, rising like smoke from every corner of the desert. They had been hiding in the planets. Darkness, waiting and watching. Now, they flowed toward the Zarathi soldiers like a tide of living night. The Zarathi opened fire, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the shadow beings. The Shadowkin surrounded the soldiers and began to drain their life energy, dropping them one by one into unconsciousness. At the same time, the ground began to shake. The Korthok swarm erupted from tunnels they had dug throughout the desert. Thousands of worker soldiers poured out of the earth, their mandibles clicking in rage. They had been preparing the planet's defenses for months, creating a network of tunnels and hiding places. The Zirathi soldiers found themselves surrounded by creatures they had only heard about in nightmares. But the worst was yet to come. From the deep desert came a sound like thunder. The Velthic pack emerged from caves they had claimed as their territory. Dekmar, the leader that Timan had saved, led his warriors in a charge that shook the ground. Their roars echoed across the landscape, a sound that froze the blood of every Zirathi soldier. The battle was over in minutes. The Zirathi had come, expecting to face a defenseless human colony. Instead, they found themselves fighting an alliance of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Their advanced weapons and military training meant nothing against creatures that could phase through matter and tear apart armored vehicles with their bare claws. Commander Zeroth watched the destruction of his ground forces from orbit. In desperation, he ordered his ships to bombard the medical station from space. If he could not capture the human doctor, he would destroy him. But as the Zirathi warships charged their weapons, something impossible happened. The sky above the medical station began to ripple and twist. The dread titans materialized in space, their massive forms blocking out the stars. These dimensional beings were larger than the Zarathi ships, and their very presence warped reality around them. "Possible," Zarath whispered. "The dread titans serve no one." One of the titans spoke, its voice reaching across space through dimensional frequencies. "We serve the healer. Withdraw or face the void between worlds." The Zirathi fleet found itself surrounded by beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Titans could reach into their ships and crush them from the inside, or banish them to empty space between realities. Zarath realized that his entire fleet was helpless against these cosmic entities. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships, retreat." Immediately, but it was too late. The Titans had already begun their work. One by one, the Zirathi warships were pushed out of normal space, banished to the dimensional void. Only Zarath's command ship was allowed to escape, and only so he could carry a message back to the Galactic Council. On the planet's surface, Temin continued his surgery on the injured Korthok, seemingly unaware of the battle raging around him. His hands never shook, his focus never wavered. To him, the patient was all that mattered. "How did you know they would come?" Sujin asked, watching the last of the Zirathi soldiers being led away by Shadowkin guards. "I didn't," Temin replied, not looking up from his work. But they did. They've been watching over this place for months, making sure no one could hurt the patients who come here. "These creatures, they're protecting you," Sujin said, finally understanding what she was seeing. "They're not just your patients. They're your friends." Dekmar approached the medical station, his massive form casting a shadow over the building. The Velthak leader looked at Sujin with his glowing eyes, then at Temin. "The small healer is safe," Dekmar said. "But this attack means the galaxy's rulers fear what is happening here. There will be more tests to come." "Let them come," Temin said, finally finishing his surgery. "We'll be ready." As news of the Zerothi defeat spread through the galaxy, every government and military force realized that something fundamental had changed. The human doctor on Kepler 440b was no longer just a curiosity. He was now the most protected individual in the universe, guarded by an alliance of creatures that even the mightiest fleets could not defeat. The age of humanity, ruling through fear and force, was ending. The age of healing and compassion was about to begin. The Galactic Council meeting was unlike any in recorded history. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, all talking about the same thing: the human doctor who had tamed the galaxy's monsters, Dr. Ru. Kim Soo-jin stood before the council, trying to explain what she had witnessed on Kepler 440b. The representatives listened with growing disbelief as she described the alliance of dangerous creatures that protected Dr. Lee Tiemann. "This is impossible," declared Ambassador Vorthan of the Crystalline Hegemony. "Predator species do not form alliances. They do not protect other beings. Your report must be mistaken." "I saw it with my own eyes," Soo-jin replied. "The Velthak, the Korthak swarm, the Shadowkin, even the Dread Titans. They all came to defend him when the Zerothi attacked." The council chamber erupted in worried chatter. If Soo-jin's report was true, then the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in ways no one understood. The creatures that had terrorized civilizations for millennia were now working together, united by their loyalty to a single human. "We need to study this phenomenon," said Counselor Zephyr, leader of the Avian Collective. "Perhaps we can learn to replicate it. Imagine if we could control these dangerous species." "Cannot control them," Soo-jin said firmly. "They are not servants or slaves. They are friends, and friends cannot be controlled." The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by an emergency alert. The chamber's lights flashed red, and the central viewing screen activated. The image showed the edge of the galaxy, where something impossible was happening. Stars were going out, not exploding, not dying natural deaths, simply vanishing as if they had never existed at all. And moving toward the galaxy's center was something that made even the Council's bravest members feel cold fear. "Void Hunters," whispered Counselor Zephyr. The legends were true. The Void Hunters were creatures of pure entropy, beings that existed to unmake reality itself. They came from the empty spaces between galaxies, consuming everything they touched. Stars, planets, entire civilizations simply ceased to exist when the Void Hunters passed through. "How long do we have?" asked Ambassador Vorthan. "At their current speed, they will reach the outer colonies in 3 days," reported the Council's chief scientist. "And they will reach the core worlds in 2 weeks. The chamber fell silent. Every species in the galaxy had weapons designed to destroy planets, but the Void Hunters were not matter that could be destroyed. They were the absence of existence itself. "We must evacuate," said Counselor Zephyr. "Abandon the outer systems and concentrate our forces around the core worlds." "It will not matter," Soo-jin said quietly. "If these creatures can unmake stars, our weapons will be useless against them." The debate continued, but everyone knew the truth. The galaxy was facing a threat that none of them could handle. Their greatest weapons, their most advanced technology, their most powerful armies, none of it would matter against beings that could erase existence itself. Meanwhile, on Kepler 440b, Dr. Tiemann was treating his strangest patient yet. The creature. It had appeared 3 days ago, materializing inside the medical station without warning. It was hard to look at directly, as if it existed in too many dimensions at once. "I do not understand why I am here," the creature said. Its voice was like the sound of reality tearing. "I am a Void Hunter. I exist to unmake, yet I seek making." Park Mingi stood in the corner, afraid to move. She had never seen Tiemann look so focused, so determined. He was scanning the creature with every piece of equipment in the medical station, trying to understand what it was. "You're hurt," Tiemann said. "Something happened when you crossed from your dimension into ours. The transition damaged your essential structure." "I was wounded moving between the void and reality," the Void Hunter admitted. "My siblings say I should simply cease to exist, but I heard stories of a place where even the impossible can be healed." The Void Hunter's injury was unlike anything Tiemann had ever seen. It was not a wound in the creature's body, but a tear in the fabric of its existence. The creature was slowly unmaking itself, caught between being and non-being. "I need help," Taman said to Minji. "Contact Dr. Beihanwu. Tell him to bring the quantum stabilizers and the reality anchors. We're going to need everything." Dr. Beihanwu arrived within hours, along with a team of specialists and equipment that most people had never heard of. Beihanwu was Taman's oldest friend, a brilliant scientist who had given up a career in theoretical physics to work in frontier medicine. "Are you completely insane?" Hyanwu asked when he saw the Void Hunter. "This thing could unmake our entire solar system by accident. Then we better make sure we heal it properly," Taman replied. The surgery took 18 hours. Taman and his team worked to stabilize the Void Hunter's existence, using quantum field generators to anchor the creature to reality. It was like trying to perform surgery on a concept, operating on the idea of existence itself throughout the procedure. The Void Hunter remained conscious, watching Taman work with something that might have been curiosity. It had never experienced care before, never known what it meant to be helped, rather than feared. "Why do you do this?" the Void Hunter asked. "Know what I am? You know what I can do?" "So you're in pain," Taman said simply, "and because you asked for help." When the surgery was finished, the Void Hunter's form stabilized. The creature looked at its own hands, solid and real for the first time since crossing into this dimension. "I am whole," the Void Hunter said, wonder in its voice. "I exist completely in your reality now. I can choose to create instead of destroy." "What will you do?" Taman asked. The Void Hunter stood up, its form now stable and strong. "I will return to my siblings. I will tell them what I have learned here, that existence is not the enemy of the void, that creation and destruction can coexist." As the Void Hunter prepared to leave, it turned back to Taman. "Kindness has changed me, healer. I am no longer a creature of pure entropy. I am something new, something that has never existed before, and I will make sure my siblings know of this miracle." The Void Hunter vanished, returning to the space between galaxies. Within hours, something unprecedented happened. The advancing tide of destruction slowed, then stopped. The Void Hunters were no longer consuming everything in their path. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched in amazement as the threat that had seemed unstoppable simply ended. The Void Hunters had withdrawn to the edge of the galaxy, no longer advancing, no longer destroying. "How is this possible?" asked Ambassador Ver. Then Dr. Sujin smiled, finally understanding the full scope of what her old colleague had accomplished. Because Dr. Lee Temin just healed entropy itself. He turned a creature of pure destruction into something that chooses to create. For the first time in galactic history, the most dangerous threat the universe had ever known had been defeated. Not by weapons or armies, but by a simple act of medical care and compassion. 1 year had passed since the Void Hunter crisis ended. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The small medical station on Kepler 4 for 2b had become the most important place in known space. And Dr. Lee Temin had become the most influential person in the universe, but Taman himself remained unchanged. He still woke up each morning, checked his medical supplies, and prepared to help whoever needed treatment. The only difference was that his patients now included beings that most people still considered myths. The Galactic Council had officially recognized the medical station as the first embassy of healing. It was neutral ground where any species could come for medical aid, regardless of their reputation or past actions. The Council had no choice but to accept this new reality. The alternative was to face the combined wrath of creatures that could reshape reality itself. Dr. Kim Soo-jin had been appointed as the first ambassador of healing, representing the new medical diplomatic corps. She worked with Temin to establish protocols for treating species that had never been studied before. Every day brought new challenges and new discoveries. The Nexus Collective is requesting permission to establish a permanent medical research station here, Soo-jin told Temin. As they reviewed the morning reports, they want to study how you treat dimensional beings, as long as they don't interfere with patient care, Taman replied. He was preparing for surgery on a young Dread Titan who had injured herself while learning to move between dimensions. And as long as they understand that every being here is a patient first, not a research subject. Park Minji had become the head nurse of the expanded medical facility. She supervised a team of specialists from dozens of species, all united by their commitment to healing. She had also become an expert in xenobiology, able to assist with medical procedures that most doctors considered impossible. "Doctor, the Void Hunter delegation has arrived," Minji announced. "They're waiting in the special containment area." The Void Hunters had become regular visitors to the medical station. After their first member had been healed, others had come seeking treatment for various conditions related to existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They were learning to be more than just destroyers, exploring what it meant to create and preserve. But the most important visitor was arriving that day. Dr. Beihaienwu had been appointed as the director of the new Medical Corps Academy, where doctors from across the galaxy would learn to treat any species that needed help. The academy was being built on Kepler 4 for 2b, turning the frontier world into the center of galactic medicine. It's hard to believe this all started with one injured, Velthok Hyunwoo said as he and Taemin walked through the expanded medical complex. Now we have facilities for treating energy beings, dimensional entities, hive minds, and creatures that exist in quantum superposition. The principles haven't changed, Taemin replied. Pain is pain, injury is injury, doesn't matter what form it takes. They were interrupted by a commotion outside. A new ship was landing, but this one was different. It was massive, larger than any vessel that had ever visited the station. The hull was covered in crystalline formations that pulsed with inner light. "That's a Nexus collective world ship," Hyunwoo said. "They're nomadic beings who travel between galaxies." "What are they doing here?" The ship's landing created a small earthquake. From its central opening came a being unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a living constellation, a creature made of star stuff that held the shape of a humanoid figure. Each step it took left glowing footprints in the ground. "I am the Nexus Prime," the being said, its voice like the sound of solar winds. "I have traveled from the Andromeda Galaxy to meet the healer who has changed the nature of existence itself." "I'm just a doctor," Taemin said, but the Nexus Prime raised a hand made of condensed starlight. "You have done more than heal individuals," the Nexus Prime said. "You have healed the concept of healing itself. In our galaxy, we have heard stories of a place where any being can find help, regardless of their nature or past actions. We have come to ask if you would help us establish similar sanctuaries in our own worlds." Taemin looked at Sujin and Hyunwoo. I talked about this possibility before, but they had never imagined it would happen so quickly. The idea of spreading their healing philosophy to other galaxies was both exciting and terrifying. "We would be honored to help," Taemin said. "But the most important thing is that healing must be offered freely to anyone who needs it. It cannot be used as a weapon or a tool of control." "This is understood," the Nexus Prime replied. "Seen what happens when healing is offered without conditions? The most dangerous beings become the most loyal protectors." As if summoned by those words, the guardians of the medical station began to appear. Dekamar and his Velthak pack emerged from the caves they had claimed. The Korthak swarm rose from their underground tunnels. The Shadowkin flowed up from the planet's core. Even the dread Titans materialized in the sky above, their massive forms blocking out the suns. "We protect the healer," Dekamar said, his voice carrying clearly across the desert. "We protect all who come here seeking aid. This is our sacred duty." The Nexus Prime looked around at the assembled guardians with something that might have been awe. "Never in all my travels have I seen such loyalty. You have accomplished something that the greatest empires in the universe could not achieve. You have united the most dangerous beings in existence under a single cause." "Not under a cause," Taemin corrected gently. "Under a principle that every being deserves help when they are suffering." Later that evening, as the Nexus Prime's ship prepared to return to Andromeda with plans for the first intergalactic medical exchange program, Taemin stood outside his original medical station. It looked small now, surrounded by the massive complex that had grown around it. But it was still the heart of everything they had built. Park Minji joined him, carrying a report of the day's treatments. 15 different species today, she said, including 2 that we've never seen before. The medical database is going to need another expansion. Do you ever regret it? Taemin asked, leaving the simple life behind. Minji smiled. Doctor, we never left the simple life behind, just made it bigger. Sujin approached them, carrying news from the Galactic Council. The Council has voted unanimously to establish the Healing Accords, she said. Every member species has agreed to respect the neutrality of medical facilities and to allow free passage for any being seeking medical aid. Even the Zerathi Empire, Taemin asked. Especially the Zerathi, Sujin replied. They've requested permission to send their own doctors here for training. Apparently they've realized that strength includes the ability to heal, not just to destroy. As the 3 friends watched the stars appear in the darkening sky, they could see the lights of ships coming and going. Beings from across the galaxy were arriving for treatment, while others were leaving to establish new healing centers on their own worlds. What do you think will happen next? Minji asked. Taemin considered the question. I think we'll keep doing what we've always done. Will help anyone who needs it, no matter who they are or where they come from. The universe is full of beings who are afraid, who are in pain, who just need someone to care about them. And if they happen to be the most terrifying creatures in existence, Sujin asked with a smile, then they probably need our help the most, Taemin replied. Above them, a Void Hunter ship materialized in orbit, bringing patients from the space between galaxies. In the distance, they could hear the songs of the Korthok swarm, who were teaching human children about the importance of community and cooperation. The Shadowkin were helping the night shift doctors. Their ability to move through darkness making them perfect assistants for emergency calls. The universe had learned a simple truth that Dr. Lee Temin had always known. There are no monsters, only beings who are afraid and in pain. And when you treat someone's pain with genuine care and compassion, you don't just heal their body, heal their soul. And sometimes you heal the entire galaxy. The age of fear was ending. The age of healing had begun. And at the center of it all was a simple medical station where any being, no matter how terrifying, could find hope, help, and the radical love of someone who saw them not as a monster, but as a patient who needed care.